Last night, Dillon Blevins, a candidate for state rep in District 65, came over to the Hicks pub and sat with me for an extensive interview. Dillon Blevins is flawed, Dillon Blevins is over the top, but he is 100% authentic, he is smart, and I think you're going to thoroughly enjoy this interview. In just a few days, the Claremont GOP, in a closed-door meeting, will be endorsing candidates in the primary. That means telling Republican voters that they should only vote for these people in their own primary election. I guarantee you that what Dillon says and the way he comes off in this interview is much more exciting than anything that's going to be heard in that closed-door meeting. As I said, I think you will thoroughly enjoy it. In this post, I have included a list of political candidates within the GOP system in Claremont County who outright refuse to answer tough questions. They refuse to answer tough questions. I also have a much smaller list of those people who will answer tough questions. Dillon is not afraid of tough questions. Gene Schmidt's afraid of tough questions. John Kirby's afraid of tough questions. Joe Dills is afraid of tough questions, and those are his opponents. So sit back, relax, get some popcorn. The interview is pretty long, but I think once you start watching it, you'll be sucked in and thoroughly enjoy it. All right, hi everybody. This is Chris Hicks and Dillon Blevins, and it's my man Dillon Blevins. Come on, young. I know what young people do, cool shit like that. Okay, so we're like sitting right outside the Hicks pub, the infamous illegal pub, in what's called the Hicks Beer Fort, on Monday night, the 9th of December. It's a Monday Night Football that's here. In a short time, there's going to be one of these ruckus illegal Hicks pub parties here where basically my neighbor buddies walk here and have some beers and watch football and then go home.
They're playing scraps in the back.
It's very exciting. I don't know, maybe we can make money doing that. So I really appreciate, Dillon, you joining me here and coming here. You know, I always ask people, I tell people I'm always open to sitting down with anybody on video, on camera, and I got to give you props because I've done it before with Gene and Joe and John Kirby. They never kind of respond. You responded, and I kind of dropped the ball and never followed through. And you were kind enough to reach back out to me and say, hey, you said you'd be open to doing it, I'm open to doing it. Just for sake of background for people, Dillon and I, the first time we met, we had about a 20-minute meeting, and Dillon was not happy with me, and I was not particularly happy with him, and he left. And there's only one bad thing about that. We didn't really agree, but he left almost a full beer on the table when he left. Couldn't
enjoy it.
So I'm going to ask Dillon a few questions here, and then he's maybe ask me some questions. And I love Dillon's energy. I love outsiders. I love mixing it up. I love bringing it to people. As anybody knows, I don't like this kind of politics where we all just have cotillions and tea and talk about how we're going to all try to work better together. I love Trump because he really defines people and things so we can really get stuff going. So Dillon, you're running for District 65 House of Representatives. Why?
Well, first and foremost, I would say because I love this area. And real quick, my voice is a little rasped. I just want to make it known that I was in the hospital all week, down with pneumonia and a fever. And I still made it out here to take the questions. There's no problem. But just in case you're wondering, I'm running because I love this county. I got into politics just several months ago when Beto O'Rourke went on live TV and said he was going to take our AR-15s. And I'm a gun guy. I was raised by a Marine. I've been raised around firearms my entire life, and it struck a chord with me. If you mix that with the other things going on with Donald Trump, with the impeachment, with Adam Shifty Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, and just the overall where we're at in politics, I don't feel comfortable sitting on the sidelines just being grumpy anymore. So I wanted to get involved. So I started looking at local offices. How could I get involved? That's when I found District 65, and it was a sweet spot waiting to happen because I seen Gene Schmidt was running, essentially in my mind unopposed. Now I know there's some other people in there, but I don't think they have what it takes to beat her or to take it to her. And I think over the last 2 months, it's been proven that they don't. We'll see more next week when the endorsement happens. I will not be seeking the endorsement of the Claremont GOP. I think it's a sham process the way they do that. First off, they're doing the endorsements before we even have to submit our petitions. So there's still people that could get into the race. It's a lot of closed-door meetings. even when they allow us to speak to the committee, it's only for a minute or 2 minutes tops. It's not enough time to get to know candidates. There's no transparency in the party. So there's a long list of reasons, but I like to summarize it as I just love this area, and I want to see transparency, and I want to see it represented by somebody who actually gives a crap.
Okay. Now you took, and I'm going to, as we go through here, I want to hit some key points. The funny thing is, Dillon here, while the other people run away from questions, he went and dug up, because I guess back in March or April, I posed 5 questions to the people who were running at that time, which were Joe, Gene, and John Kirby. And Dillon dug them up and says, like, well, send them to me, I'm ready for my questions. And these are a little bit dated. So, but I'm going to fire these off real quick, and because the first question had to do about about tax increases. At the time I wrote these, we had just seen the hotel tax increase, the plate fee increase. We know there's a lot of tax levies. You know, where do you stand on taxes? Let me just ask you that question.
Well, I seen on the question too was the gas tax, and I remember I like to call him Mike No Spine DeWine. Ran on low taxes, and as soon as he was, voted in as governor, one of his first actions was to pass a gas tax for the deficits we had with the road problems. I was very anti that. I'm not for raising taxes, period. I think there's other ways we can raise money locally.
One of the things I like to say to people is, as soon as the government can prove to me they're spending the money they already take out of my pocket effectively, that's when I'll be willing to listen to them about how they need more money out of my pocket.
Well, they spent all our money building the sound walls around 75 and 71 when they knew they were going to need that money for the roads, and they just kept kicking the can down the road. And that was conservatives doing that, so we haven't had strong Republican leadership.
You know, I like Dillon because it's funny when people hear you or see some of your stuff on Facebook and so forth, it's over the top, but at other times you can tell you're a smart guy, and you think the things through and you hit on some of the right points. So I think you have, we'll see what happens in this race, but I think your participation is great. The second question that was here was about something called the Work Act. At the time this was written, it had to do with the reality still to this day that county elected officials only need to perform their duties of office legally in Ohio once every 90 days. And Mr. Becker, our current state rep, was doing a typical John Becker bill, a lot of bravado at the front and nothing happened at the back, to try to tighten that up and make county level elected officials have to spend more time at work. Still nothing compared to regular people, but how do you feel about, probably you could talk about that, but as a state rep, would you be full-time? How do you feel about when you're in
it's a
political
full-time
service?
role, and that's one of the things I was going to say today, and a commitment to the Claremont County voters is I'm not for supporting new legislation that tells people they have to work. If you can't work enough to get stuff done, you shouldn't be voted in. It's up to the people to vote those people out. My big thing is John Becker, which I like John Becker, but he's been in the he runs as being the most conservative member in the House, and that's great. That's a great accolade. But what does that accomplish? And how many bills has been passed under John Becker over the last 6 years? I don't think many major ones. 0. Okay.
He claims 1. He claims some pro-life bill when he first got in, so it's either 0 or 1.
And I mean, no disrespect to John, but to me, it should have been voted out. My pledge to Claremont County is that I'm going to do a 2-year term, and if I can't get a bill passed within the 2 years, I won't run again. I'm running on 2 major bills, and I'll divulge into those a little more. One is the Kobe bill, which will look at reclassifications of drugs for Class 1 and sentencing surrounding those. And I'll divulge more into that. And then the second one is going to be fighting for an Ohio constitutional carry, similar to what Kentucky has. As I mentioned before, I'm an NRA certified pistol instructor. I'm as pro-gun as it gets, which I know John Becker also says he's pro-gun. I think Gene Schmidt says she's pro-gun. I think Joe Dill says he's pro-gun. But I don't really feel like they're pro-gun. I'm the only candidate who's proposed anything as far as guns. And I didn't just propose a small thing. A constitutional carry is a big deal. So those 2 bills, you give me 2 years, and you're not going to be worried about is Dillon going to the House once every 90 days. Dillon's going to live there.
So the one thing I just want to make sure we're clear here, and I appreciate those 2 things. There is an Ohio constitutional carry bill right now. It's stalled out. It went through John Becker's committee. It's like what I said described as a typical Becker bill.
Mm-hmm.
No disrespect to John. I like John. But it's also, just so everybody knows, you were telling me there's 99 reps, 33 senators in Ohio. It is to be honest with you, being a state rep is a terrible job. It is very hard to get anything done. because you got 99 different people, you got all the lobbyists, you got a leadership trying to push you different ways, everybody wanting to get their 1 or 2 bills. Think about that they want to get through. So the one thing I would encourage you to do is, if these bills, there's always co-sponsors, but I think there should be more collaboration on the front so that there's not so many bills. What happens is every rep gets there and proposes 2, 3,
Sure.
4 bills, and that guarantees they're never going to get through the system. So, but these sound like anything in dealing with drug reform or gun reform,
And there's currently right now a House bill, I forget, it's like House Bill 305 for an Ohio Stand Your Ground Act that was just brought to the table. I'm a huge advocate for that. As soon as that broke, I was showing support for that. So it's not just the one bill I'm talking about. That's what I would be fighting for. But anywhere I can lend support to other House reps to help push gun legislation, that's what I'll do.
You know what I would love to do? John Becker had hearings. There were hearings on the Work Act, which is about the having to be at work more for elected officials. There was one hearing, and then it kind of stalled out, and there were supposed to be more hearings. There haven't been any other hearings. I'll tell you what, if you want to do it, if Becker, I'll challenge Becker right now, you get another hearing on the Work Act, maybe both of us can go up there and testify on it. I don't know if you've ever testified on a bill before, but it takes also citizens, everybody out there can go testify on a bill. You got to know when the meetings are and so forth. But that Work Act is kind of stalled out, and it would be nice to get some hearings on that. Maybe you'll have a goal of getting a bill passed in your first 2 years. Maybe John Becker can have a goal of getting a bill passed in his last year. So you nailed one of my questions here. One of the other questions, and these are from March or April, so they might have been good questions, was around FC Cincinnati and Milford. I think people know the county basically put in $24 million of incentives to get that facility in Milford that is now, I guess, technically pretty complete. Do you think that's a good deal for taxpayers, and how do you feel about that kind of, you'll know how I feel based on the way I say this, pick the winners type of capitalism deals being done?
Well, I'm a little biased because I'm a huge sports fan. So when you're talking about bolstering Cincinnati sports, you're going to tickle my heart pink. But ultimately, how the FC Cincinnati deal went down was full of, closed door meetings and hidden loopholes, and it was a crap show. I didn't like how it went down. I really appreciated Chris's coverage of all the different instances. At the end of the day, I am happy that there is an FC Cincinnati facility in Milford. I think it creates enthusiasm for the area, and I think it's good for the community. Aside from FC Cincinnati, Cincinnati Bengals just was awarded land in Hamilton County next to their stadium, which is currently a construction site, and they got a sweetheart deal with that, and they're turning it into a music venue. I was for that. I think it's good for the city. If we can invest in the city, we're going to bring in more high-income earners, and that's going to help raise tax revenues.
One thing that I would encourage you to get familiar with, too, is we have a separate discussion on good and bad economic development. While FC Cincinnati was going on, I can't remember the name of it, there was sort of a retirement thing going on Beachmont Avenue, and some of those things actually create dramatically more jobs and more economic activity because every day people are coming to work there. So when you see like the hospital on Ivy Point going in, there's going to be another hospital there. So what I encourage, a lot of politicians like to be acting like they're big business people, and most of them don't know shit about business. But also realizing that when you have incentives to put into a deal, there are things you're going to do for pride and because it looks great and it creates some excitement. But also remembering that there's basic blocking and tackling type of economic development, and that's about providing good jobs so that people in Claremont County can stay living in Claremont County and not have to go someplace else or drive someplace else to work. The last of these 5 questions, and he helped me out a lot by going and looking up old questions I had written that still to this day, Gene Schmidt, Joe Dills, and John Kirby won't answer. Joe Dills actually at one point sent me a note saying he would answer these questions and then never actually answered them. I ask him that every time I see him. What happened to those answers in other questions?
Look, let me just interrupt you real quick. Chris Hicks aside, it's not about that. It's about transparency. We're running to be your state representative. You're entrusting us to represent you at the Ohio House for the next 2 years. If you can't answer questions from Chris Hicks, what are you going to do in the state house when you're dealing with Larry Householder bullying you? You got to have a spine, and that's just how it is.
I appreciate it. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. It's funny, at the screening committee meeting, I had questions and Greg Simpson, the party chair, forbade my questions. And I said to a couple guys out front, actually Adam Bird, to his compliment, tapped me on the shoulder and told me, I'll answer your question offline. And in front of the building, a couple guys were standing out there, one of them being Adam Bird. And I made the comment, if we can't ask tough questions to each other, what is going to happen when we get asked tough questions by people other than us?
Let me just tell you, the Central Committee, there's a big banding together to get rid of Chris. We know this. There's the impeachment and all that.
Four times.
And listen, like Chris said, the first time we met for 20 minutes, and I stormed out and called him words I wouldn't repeat now.
What were those words? No.
Yeah, Lord has forgiven me. Seriously, I'm not proud of that moment, but it happened, and Chris can get under people's skin. But banding together as a party to get rid of a guy because he asks questions and digs and looks and researches, and goes against what we're for, which is transparency.
Right.
We're a one-party county. We're doing Republican. When's the last time we've been ran by Democrats?
There was a time like in the 70s or something like that. It was a Democrat-controlled county.
So when you have there's going to be some discord within the Republican Party. There's going to be the Hickses and the other ones. You have to have that. If it's all kumbaya, what questions are you ever going to get answered?
Well, I'm going to ask you about Trump in a second, but I want to just make a comment here because, I'm a person that believes that tough questions. I believe that real change happens in conflict. It's how our country started. Okay, our country started in conflict. I even say to my Christian friends, I'm a deep Christian. Jesus Christ was conflict. Okay, he created all sort of conflict. He still creates conflict to this day. So when we try to just ignore tough questions, ignore different views on policy, not be able to really get into the hard things with each other, to me, we're never going to give people the best government. And one thing I love about Trump is he came right in there. People talk about me. He came in there, Lion Ted, Little Marco, hammering these people on this is bullshit that we have a country where we have so-called conservative leaders never get shit done. Mm-hmm. So, Dillon, you told me I think you like Trump, maybe a little bit, or what's kind of your view on Donald Trump?
The day Donald Trump came down the escalator, I think it was June 16th, in 2016, he talked about China and Mexico sending the drugs and the cartels and all these issues. That day I went on eBay, bought me bumper stickers, slapped them on my car, and I have been a full-fledged Trumper since then. My whole thing with Trump is he's not perfect, and everyone knows that. But we weren't.
Who is?
Right. We weren't electing a pastor-in-chief. We were electing an effective governor. And that's what I am trying to present myself as. I'm not your picket fence, picture-perfect candidate. You're not electing me to be your pastor. You're electing me to go to Columbus and to fight for you. And I'm not, I'm a tough guy. And I will go down and I'll go tell Larry Householder exactly how I feel and why I'm there. And I can collaborate too. Just like with Chris, we didn't get along, but here I am. We're working together. And you mentioned Trump and him making fun of Little Marco, and he made fun of Cruz, Lion Ted. And you see them now; they all get along. Lindsey Graham and Trump are friends, and he dogged Lindsey Graham the whole trail. But you know what? At the end of the day, the election's over, and you got a country to run. So that's how you can have debates. We should have debates often. We should have conflicts.
By the way, I call it what Trump. People say name calling and so forth, and there's name calling to me like you're fat, you're ugly, you're this, and what Trump does, and it's like editorial cartoons.
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
He lampoons people, and the reason why they get so upset is because he does it so well. He hits them with things that really evoke their personality and so there's a difference between I know it's a fine line. There's a difference between hurtful name calling. What you see is that's why Marco Rubio tried to do it. He can't do it because he doesn't have it up here to be able to kind of pinpoint people down to the essence of what they are. And that's one of the beauties of Trump. And what's funny is he actually helps people mature through that process. Ted Cruz is a better man now than he was because of what happened in the whole primary. Now, I got to ask you one other thing here. We got to keep moving here. We've got people on it all day. They got to get back to work and all that kind of stuff. Man, you hate Gene Schmidt. You bring up a lot of stuff about Gene Schmidt, and what's about that? Why so passionate against Gene Schmidt?
Well, like I said, she's been in politics since before I was born, which there's nothing wrong with being old and in politics. I respect my elders. But I'm with Senator Ted Cruz in that we need to get more term limits for senators. I know in the Ohio House we already have some limits. But when somebody's already been in Congress multiple times, they've been a trustee in the 80s, and now their net worth over millions of dollars, and they've made millions over the years. They've had scandals, borrowing money from Turkish special interest groups. Chris likes it when I call her stone cold crooked, and she is. I can't stand it. I can't picture that representing Clermont County. The county I live in is not full of rich, and listen, there's lots of demographics out here. But what I'm saying is, she doesn't represent your traditional Clermont County person who's, my slogan is God, Guns, Trump. I think that's probably the closest thing to a Clermont County citizen.
Well, I love, there's good hillbillies and bad hillbillies, good rednecks and bad rednecks, but generally speaking, hell, my last name's Hicks. I love good rednecks and hillbillies, common sense people, and I think there's a lot of common sense people. But let's get to this. What's up with this?
Oh,
well, I don't know if you can see this, this seems a little, what's up? I was printing these questions out. I saw this. I had to find it on your page. What's up with this? Who is this jackass?
Facebook took that down.
Who is this jackass, and why is this picture with a big dumbass red nose on there? It says, support Schmidt. What's that about?
Well, Chris, you said that you would support Gene Schmidt. No, excuse me. You said you would vote for Gene Schmidt, and there's apparently a huge difference. So I almost feel voting is more significant than supporting, but it eared me the wrong way.
So here, let
me go back and we already talked a little bit why I don't like Gene
Hold on,
Schmidt.
let's get a picture of the nose. Where'd the nose come from? Did you get that from? Is that okay? So
I'm tech savvy.
You finish up, but I want to tell you my view of this. Okay.
Okay, and I know he's got his philosophy about editing photos. You can edit all my photos all you want. Okay, I don't care. But
I don't do this. I don't modify facial features and stuff like that. But go ahead.
Okay. Anyways,
I don't do any of it. The wife who's running the camera does that kind of stuff. So
I'll apologize for that, Chris. I was upset when you said you would vote for Gene Schmidt. The reason I reached out to Chris from day one, when I got in this race, Chris was the very first person I reached out to. It was because from a young age, I seen him running for office against Linda Fraley, and I liked the way he campaigned about transparency in government, being an outsider, being a Trump guy, and changing Clermont County. And to me, Gene Schmidt embodies everything I just described. The opposite.
The opposite of it.
And then now you have this guy who I look as this champion of the people, and then he's saying he's going to support Schmidt. It seems hypocritical.
So let me tell you what I said. And you know what's funny is what I said, and nobody ever questioned me about it. Okay, so I said, you got it right. I said I would vote based on the people that are running right now. If I was forced to vote for one of them, I would vote for Gene Schmidt. Okay, and only one person has ever actually asked me, why would you vote for Gene Schmidt? And I'm not going to answer that question on camera here. You can ask me that when we turn off the camera. You can ask me, why did I say I would vote for Gene Schmidt? I don't want to vote for Gene Schmidt. Okay, let's make that perfectly clear. When the camera's off, I'll tell you why I said I vote for Gene Schmidt, and everything I say is on the record. Okay?
Okay.
Now, what about this? When I was printing these things out, just when I ran up to my office to print out those questions when Dillon got here, and then I noticed this. This looks like you're almost copying my stuff.
Oh, okay? Yeah, I did copy that.
So, about Mr. Dills. Now, for the record, I love the enthusiasm of Dills also. I think I told you I got to be careful what I say, because I told Joe I would vote for him in the second round, and he might think that's a vex on him, but that I would vote for him over Gene in the second round if that's how it worked out, and it may well. But what about this plagiarizing my stuff? What's going on here?
Well, I mean, they're just photos.
I thought you were positive on Joe.
Well, I was positive on Joe. Me and Joe have met several times and had lunch, and I'll keep our conversations private because we were off record. But we kind of have an understanding that we had a common enemy, and that's Gene Schmidt. And if we could just kind of unify together and bring Gene down, that would be great. Then, while I was in the hospital this week, I got a copy of Joe Dills's Cincinnati Enquirer editorial. And that's where I seen that he said, and I quote, "I'm the only candidate running who represents a new American."
Right, I saw it. What's funny was I printed these out, I saw you had that online too. And you had it highlighted, that line in there.
It set me off because it was misleading, it was a lie.
Right.
He's not the only candidate running. That will be a new American political dream.
Do you think that Joe wrote that editorial?
No.
Okay, so what's one thing I like about you is you're authentic. Okay, we don't need more unauthentic, political people. And I wish Joe the best, and But I printed that out just because I noticed when I was printing the things out that that's very close to mine now.
Listen, let me tell you, I drove to all 3 of those businesses today and took videos and was taking pictures. Chris did a lot of work for me, I ain't gonna lie.
Okay, not for you. You plagiarized it, so we don't.
It's not for
Somebody else said I
Not for
didn't. I
profit.
know you're making thing. I didn't do it. Okay, I'm innocent. Okay,
It was a retweet.
all right, so I think I've enjoyed talking. You know, I've really, you know, I think you're vibrant, you're fresh. You know, I just really appreciate it. I appreciate you having the guts. You're a young guy, and you got more guts than these supposedly seasoned politicians. And man, they got to be afraid if you were in debates with these guys, you'll rip their asses up.
Well, let me tell you, just real quick about myself. When I was 17 years old, my house burnt down. I was raised in a heroin home, was poor. I grew up shopping in thrift shops. I know what it's like to be poor. When I moved out at the age of 17, I got my first job at Skyline Chili, washing dishes. I put myself through college for 5 years, got a bachelor's degree. I even brought somewhere with me. I brought my W-2 from last year to show that last year I made 70 grand at the age of 28, which isn't some huge number. I'm not rich, but I hang my hat on that. I'm a kid that didn't have much growing up, and I'm just a fighter. I'm not just gonna sit in the porch and be a little puppy sits in the porch. But when so that's why when I got into this race and you have people trying to tell me, oh, kind of like what you said, they like to see the young people step in line and be quiet. And that's just not me. If I sat in line and been quiet my whole life, I would have gotten nowhere. Nobody believed in me when I was 17 and was going to college I wanted to be a businessman, you know. And so just anyways, a lot about me. I'm a tough guy, and that's where I differentiate from a lot of these politicians. They don't know how to take me because I'm real thick-skinned. And
Well, you don't fit in a simple box because you're over the top, but you're also an intelligent guy, and you can tell that talking to you that you're an intelligent guy, and you're going to be I'm not saying now, but you're going to be a force to be reckoned with if you stick with it. Now, do you know Dave Ramsey? You familiar with Dave Ramsey? Yeah. So I have some of the books from when I got all the books with part of the thing. I want to give you one of those because one of the things I found, all work's good work, you know, and I live a very Dave Ramsey lifestyle, and I'll tell you something. Sometimes people, maybe like Gene Schmidt, you get to a point where you got all the fancy stuff, the fancy house, the fancy this. Those are all anchors on you, okay? You don't want to be, you know, poor, living in a trailer in a heroin house, something like that. But at some point, get to your point of where you have what you need and realize that next, you know, the BMW, the great big house, those become things that hold you back. And you want to have money's to give you freedom, not to enslave you. Now, so I appreciate Dillon. Now, you said you had, you can ask me any question. Anybody can ask me any question they want.
I have one question for you. Okay. I think it's a good
Hold on.
question.
Is it a mathematical question? Or
I wouldn't try to outsmart you, Chris. My question is simple. You've always been run as the outsider.
I've only run once.
Okay.
So.
And you've always ran one time as the outsider. And you pledged to be the transparency king.
Yeah.
And you also have been banging the endorsement process for quite some time as being a sham. Why are you seeking the GOP endorsement?
Well, I sought the GOP endorsement before. And a lot of people that talk about this, the one time I ran, I sought the GOP endorsement. And people don't bother to check what actually happened when I sought the GOP endorsement. So, and what I actually said when I sought the GOP endorsement. So, what I'd encourage people, I don't want to say now because what would happen now if I said what I was going to say, I would either get told I'm outlawed, I'm this, I'm that, you know, but yeah, I am totally against primary endorsements. I think not only do they rig the process, and it's all kissing ass on insiders, but they hold out new talent. They keep new talent out of the process, and they cause behavior in the committee members that is super counterproductive. You've got all these people. What we're going to find is you come to a committee meeting at the headquarters, maybe 60, 70 people show up. You were at some of them where more people show up. There's 160 something people. They only ever all show up on endorsement night. Like half the committee never even shows up. They don't do anything to volunteer. They don't do anything to advance the party. But it's a sacred right that they endorse people because in Claremont County, that card is considered to be the gold standard. If you're on it, you win. If you're not on it, you don't win. When I ran, they were so afraid of me, they put Linda Fraley on that card when she was not endorsed. And they canceled 2 Central Committee meetings so that there couldn't be an outright revolt against it. So I am totally against primary endorsements. And anybody that would check and see what I did in 2018 when I sought the endorsement and what I instructed people when we got to the vote on endorsement, would know that I am very true to my word. I'm also they changed up the endorsement policy because it's all rigged to try to force endorsements. And you can only vote for no endorsement effectively in the first round of voting in every race. And I will vote, I'm telling everybody, I will always vote no endorsement in the first round, but they've changed the system around so that now you're forced to have to pick one of the candidates. You're not allowed to vote no endorsement. That's how corrupt it is. You're not allowed to let there be an open race. So that's why I told Joe Dills I'd vote for him in the second round, because in the second round, I either have to vote for somebody that's left or I can't vote at all. So it's just totally not right, and hopefully it'll change over time, and hopefully we'll see what happens. Let me ask you a real quick question.
Okay.
You had made some remarks now. What do you do in your campaign if Gene Schmidt gets endorsed? What do? You running, not running?
Oh, I'm running.
Okay.
I mean,
at this point, I know you had the thing with Joe that you talked about. Are you running no matter what at this point?
I'm running no matter what.
Okay.
And I have from day one, and I told Joe Dills this to his face, I don't think he's going to get endorsed. I think Gene Schmidt's going to get endorsed. I told Joe that I'm not seeking the endorsement. I didn't want it. And in a way, I was kind of giving Joe a little breathing room so he might have an opportunity to beat Gene. I don't think he's going to beat Gene.
We'll see. I think he's got a shot. So we'll see what happens in the endorsement.
But I'm in this regardless.
Here's what I like. I like races with no endorsement that say, we respect primary voters. We're talking about the primary. These are Republican voters voting in the Republican primary, and we try to control their choice, and that's wrong. Hey, I want to wrap it up because people are going to start showing up here for Monday Night Football. Thank you, Dillon. I appreciate it. Hopefully you're not contagious with whatever the hell you got. And I look forward to your future. It's shitty weather outside here. I wonder, why do people want to live in Ohio since they invented air conditioning? But I want to live in Ohio a little longer so I can.
They got all the heaters at the Hicks pub.
I want to live in Ohio a little longer so I can see what this guy does. So thank you, Dillon. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.